Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. Today we're going to be talking about what happens in your body when someone throws a wrench in the works, when there's a change of plans. And as always, you can find reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving. And you can learn more about us and how to practice with us live on our website at wholeheartedloving.com. Before we get started, we are going to do a self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Okay. So we're thumping today?
Thump, thump.
Thump, thump. So let's, before we thump, let's get settled in your seat or settled standing. You could even do this one laying down if you wanted to. And we're going to make some gentle fists. And it's just a thump. I like to start sort of on my chest. And then often for me, it spreads out. And I just follow wherever my hands want to go. But maybe yours want to stay in one spot. And I like to think of them as like love thumps. And my hands went towards my head. So I've changed my fist to just like a little bit of a cupping hand. And actually even towards just fingertips on my head. And now I notice I want to thump on my back. And so I'm using the backs of my hands. So what's happening is I'm just adjusting as I go along to what feels best. What in terms of the type of, hand touch I'm using, but also what feels good in terms of where and the pace. And as always, these body practices are suggestions. I like to think of them as like a gateway to taking some time to connect with yourself. So let it evolve and change as it needs to. You don't need to follow the instructions. Mine has evolved into adding some pressure with my fingers onto my shoulder, neck area. I don't know the proper body name.
Trapezoid?
Trapezoid? No, that's a shape, isn't it? Trapezius? Were we paying attention in school? And I'm doing a motion that I haven't really done before, which is like pushing down on the muscle, but then rotating my shoulder. And so what's nice about these practices, if you are willing to give yourself time to play and explore and discover, is you might find something that feels good that you never knew felt good. Mm. And that's one of the things I like about these practices and making this time.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Qigong and also having a massage.
It does. We had our own little Qigong massage moment. Nice. Inspired moment.
I like it.
Yeah, and I'm like adding a little acupressure now, I'm sure.
back. It's a spa day.
It's a spa day. We joke about that, but we could have very easily not added an element of qigong, not added an element of massage, not added an element of acupressure and cracking your back, and not had a spa moment.
Mm-hmm.
That happens often. I think we think it's a waste of time. It's not the real thing. It would be nicer if someone else did it. It's not for long enough. And all the reasons why we don't give ourselves little moments of pleasure and reprieve throughout the day.
Yes. Spa moment. I like that. We wait for spa day, but we could be having multiple spa moments throughout the day as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Yes.
Thanks, Gigi. So, you were telling me a little story about locking the door.
My life. My
Yeah.
life ends up being the source of inspiration for so many of these conversations.
So unexpected changes of plans. You're going about your business, you've got a cunning plan, and then life happens.
And someone messes it up.
Messes it up. And then what? Then our bodies respond. Our stories activate.
Yes.
And we do something.
Well, it used to all go to hell.
Oh, yes.
So I want to maybe start with that. I, in the past, never felt very skilled, let's call it, at dealing with coping with sudden changes, especially if they were changes that meant some disappointment for me. Something wasn't going to go as planned as I had expected. It was a change of plans that was sort of in the hands, like someone else's doing led to this sudden change. And I want to add some nuance here. If it was something, okay, how do I want to say this? I wouldn't always outwardly show, or barely would ever outwardly show my frustration, disappointment, and sort of, I'm going to use the word distress. Like right now, looking back, I don't think that was distress, like on the scale of, things that are distressing, but it felt distressing to me at the time. And I wouldn't have really shown it to people because I also had a strong people pleaser part and a conflict avoidant part. So I would just sort of suffer internally with this yucky feeling and this brain that went super fast thinking about things that didn't feel good to think about. And I also labeled myself because of that as someone who doesn't handle change well, and change of plans and disappointment well. And that became, I think, my identity for a while. And so it was nice this past week to have something happen and realize, oh, a lot of things have shifted for me in that realm. And to reflect on, how is that possible? What has changed? What have I practiced? What are choices I'm making now that are different? What's the mindset shift that's happened that's allowed me to feel so much more comfortable at ease with changes of plans and okay with them, sort of even able to find the delight in them, which in the past, if you would have told me that, I wouldn't have believed you. What's your history with how well you coped with sudden changes of plans?
It's funny. I just took a couple of notes while you were talking. So I remember a sudden change maybe a few months ago where my body responded in the way that it is programmed to, which is to burst into tears and enter the calamity zone in an instant. But my story had changed and my connection with my body had changed, and I handled it with grace, which is not my history. So,
no?
yeah, I mean, I used to just be like, a super manipulator to make sure things happened the way I wanted them to happen, right? And then there was probably a point of just sort of give up and dissociate and whatever, everything's fine. You know, the people pleaser
Right.
kicked in for sure.
Yeah.
And then I sort of got to a semi-balanced place of I can handle change, but if there's a change that's like maybe I'm at the edge of my bandwidth and or one change will screw up a huge series of other things, you know, big scope kind of changes. It's like jumping over a cliff. Like I just immediate catastrophe feelings, burst into tears, begging for my mother styles. Not that she's going to help necessarily, but yeah, I remember actually the last time that happened for me was when I was moving here. And it was the edge for a lot of things. It was a huge life change in like every way. There were moving trucks, there were ferry schedules, there were people involved on both sides of the boat, like timing wise, financially stretched, all of these things. And at the last minute, everything would not fit into the truck.
Oh,
And I
no.
was like, that's it. I'm dead. I can't. I think I burst into tears. And I don't know, it literally or figuratively collapsed. And then, you know, launched into action to get another truck. And once all of that calamity had been resolved and I was finally in the lineup with the truck at the boat, I started trembling like a little deer. It was like
No.
trauma response had caught up and I was like trembling and shaking. And I was able to recognize that as I had had a hard day and I needed some gentle lovingness and maybe some like cozy soup or something.
And
Very
you
different.
survived it.
I did.
Very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Very
I
different.
handled it with grace, I think you said.
Oh,
And
yes.
it
That was
was
not
not
that.
like that before. That was not that.
Ungrace. The time I can remember more recently is so now we're differently stretched and differently at the edge. This was home renovation time and cohabitation time with new people. And I was trying to reduce my spending on all renovation items. And one of the things that involved was swapping the stove upstairs. They were going to get a new stove. So I would take the upstairs stove and I had matched a hood vent to it and done all this design stuff around it. And, and then my housemate Adam leaned on the stovetop to reach something and the top cracked, the ceramic top cracked.
No.
Oh, yes. And I think my insides sort of seized up. And I remember the feeling, the desire to cry, feeling present. And then I remember thinking, this is a moment in time. Breathe. I felt the need to stand outside. So I stood outside. I breathed. I looked at several trees on purpose. And that was it. I felt my feet and I breathed and I looked at trees. And after a few minutes, I was like, guess I'm getting a new stove.
Yeah, some sort of like gentle acceptance, right? I'm sure there was still disappointment, maybe frustration, maybe some fear of like, where's the money going to come from for this, you know, but more gracious acceptance of the situation. And like what I hear in that is taking some time to shift your focus
Yes.
to the fresh air, to being outside, to look at trees on purpose, to connect with your breath. All of that was shifting at least some energy and focus away from thoughts that are not helpful, old thoughts that might not be helpful.
Yeah. Or problem solving. You know, I think in the past, I probably would have immediately gotten online to see how much new stoves cost. I would have been trying to line things up to change the situation, you know, and that would have revved me up more. That would have sunk me further into this broken stove reality instead of just shifting my focus and having a breath, having a pause.
I think that's you said two things I want to highlight here. To become more aware of what revs us up more. And like getting revved up isn't always a bad thing, but it's noticing like, are you needing to be revved up for something? Is it like helping you fuel towards movement for something? Or is it revving you up in a way that's just causing stress and distress and overwhelm? And then for you to also notice, what was it? Revved up, or sucked in further.
Yes.
Right? Noticing which thoughts, which actions suck us in further to whether it's some sort of victim mentality or, some unhelpful place. When we can recognize how that feels in the body to feel revved up more or sucked in further, that gives us a lot of really good information because you can start choosing, do I want to add the next thought or action that revs me up more or sucks me down further? Or would I like to have a bit of reprieve from both of those things, perhaps even lean towards something that could feel decent or better?
This is a magic superpower.
Mm-hmm. I've been
Yeah.
practicing this lately with people who tell me I ruminate a lot and I stress out about things a lot. And so we'll take the thing they're stressed about. They might say, I'm stressed about how my ex-partner is treating me. And we'll track that in body for a moment, just a moment, not very long. And it's in some unpleasant feeling. And then we'll come to body presence of, hey, something I feel my body touching right now is this spiky ball in my hand, for example. And we'll be with that for a moment. And something I see is a fluffy white cloud outside. And we'll be with that for a moment too. And then I give them a choice point of where would you like to shift your focus to now? It could be back to that first thought that felt yucky, or it could be to something else, whether it's like, I want to look at the leaves on my plant, or I want to remember that I'm loved and supported. It could be something more vague like that, or something just really concrete and practical. I see the pen on my table. But what was neat watching people play with that is they were starting to notice, I don't want to do anything more that creates more of that yucky feeling. And they were starting to see that that can change by what they choose to focus on next, whether it's in their thoughts or just visually or in some sensory way, shifting the focus. And to see that sense of agency light up in them, like, holy crap, you mean I don't have to get all revved up? I don't have to get sucked in? Like, I could if I wanted to. There's nothing wrong about it. But if I wanted to feel something different, I can actually create some change and a shift in a really short amount of time. They're blown away.
Yeah.
So it's exciting for me to be able to do this work with you and support people in recognizing, how does it feel in my body when I start feeling revved up? Do I enjoy that feeling? How does it feel when I'm starting to get sucked in?
Yeah.
Right? Is that a nice feeling? Do I want more of that feeling right now?
I love how very optional like everything is. And how locked into and unconscious of our patterns we are. We've just learned and experienced whatever we've experienced, and all of it is optional. And if you get back to how you want to feel, and you do these tiny little things that we're describing, feeling your feet, looking around, shifting your focus, it really is magic. I'm also excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how has your change management handling being with shifted?
Well, I got a little sample picture of my progression this
Oh,
past week, real life progression. So in the morning, I'm driving one kid to hockey, to a school, and then I got to drive him back to his own school. And that has actually turned out something that I thought would be stressful has actually turned out to be something that was like a real joy and a gift and a gem in my day, because it's allowed me to go on these morning walks, rain or shine, and I get some fresh air. I usually do my qigong somewhere. I find a sweet spot with the trees, and I listen to a podcast, and I've really looked forward to it. I can really feel that my body craves it now, and it sets me up for a much more pleasant day to have that time. And this particular day, it was like monsoon raining. And I was thinking, am I going to go for a walk, or am I going to go pay the drop-in fee at the rec center and go use the gym? And part of me was like, it's pissing rain down. It might be nice to go to the gym. But what I noticed was my body was like, but no, I want fresh air. I want to feel the air. It's okay that it's rainy. I got a good coat. And so I was excited to get to listen to that piece of body wisdom, because I also played it out in my mind and my body of what would it be like to stay dry in the gym. And the gym has this sort of smell that it's not a horrible smell, but it's a smell. It's not a fresh air outside in the forest smell. And that's the thing that hit me. I was like, I don't know if I feel up for that smell today for an hour and that kind of stuffy air. And so that was it. Body had decided it's going to be an outside in the pouring rain kind of day, listen to a podcast. And then as I am about to, go get out of the car, put on my coat, do my thing, I get this text from the other kid. He says, "Are you coming back home?" I said, "Well, not for a while." And I already know he's left, or actually, I don't know. It's still morning. Yeah, he says, "Are you coming back home?" I said, "No. I dropped off your brother. I'm going to do my thing." And he said, "Well, who's going to lock the door of the house?" I was like, "What do you mean? You're going to lock the door of the house because you're the last one to leave." He's like, "No, because I'm at school already."
Happened.
And I'm like trying to figure out his thought process. I'm like, "You were the last person in the house." He's like, "Yep." He's like, "But I thought you were coming back."
Oh.
I said, "Well, even if I'm coming back, like it would be a while, so the house would be unlocked for a while." Right? He's like, "Yep." Anyways, first that was a big surprise I didn't want to freak out about it. Like I didn't feel like I had to make him feel bad about it. I didn't feel like all in a huff of like, now you've put this on me and I've got to go change my whole plan and, go lock the door. I noticed the ability to just sit with that reality of like, okay, this is what's happening. And then run through some scenarios in my mind and body of how would it feel. Part of me thought, no, I have this plan. I'm going to go for this nice hour-long walk. Not changing the plan. And then part of me was like, well, we're expecting a delivery today. Nobody's home for a couple hours. I don't really know how I feel about leaving everything unlocked. And I thought to myself, like, would that feel good? Would I be able to enjoy my walk? Because what if something happened? And I'll add in, this was not my house. This was their dad's house that he was not there and we stayed there. And so this is not even my house. So it adds an extra layer of responsibility of like, I don't want to leave someone else's house unlocked. Right. So I was like, okay, I sat in the car and I ran through that scenario. The body did not feel good with that knowing of I'm going to leave someone else's house unlocked for a couple hours. So I was like, okay. It wasn't like, shit, now I gotta whatever, which I think would have been my old body response and old mind response. It was like, okay, well then I'll drive back. It will give me, I still have enough time to come back and pick up my kid and everything will still be fine. And then on my way driving there, I was like, well, what do I get to do now instead? So I was excited to think about, what do I get to do now instead with the amount of time that I have that I wouldn't be doing if this scenario didn't happen. And so I realized, I'm going to lock the door. When I go in, I'm going to tidy up some things that I knew I needed to tidy up later in the day anyways. I realized body-wise, I still wanted a walk. I still craved that. So I was like, okay, well, I'll get there. I'll put on my coat like I planned, and I'll walk there. And I think in the end, by the time I tidied some things up and got myself sort of set up for later in the day, I only had like 15 minutes left. Old me would have thought, what a waste of time. What's the point? 15 minutes. And I would have been super annoyed. I was supposed to have this hour-long walk and get to listen to my podcast, and now I've only got 15 minutes, and like, why bother at all? How I am today, I was like, I still get 15 minutes to do this thing I really wanted to do. And you know what's even cooler about this is in this neighborhood, it's a bit hilly. So it feels a little bit more like a workout, which that day I had, been debating a proper in quotation marks, a gym workout or just walking. And I was like, oh, that'll be nice. I get to walk around in the forest, in the hills, and get my fresh air still. I still get to listen to my podcast. And it's the I still get to mentality. And what else do I get to do now? What do I get to do now? Which never would have entered my mind before, because I would have been so focused on what has been taken away from me. Right. And I probably would have thought of limitation, right? Yeah. Constriction, constraints. And I would have thought, this is where a little bit of resentment would have crept in the past. God damn it. I spent all that time figuring out how I wanted to spend that hour and be so intentional with that hour. And now it's all messed up.
Love it. Yeah.
But yeah, like I was really able to shift to like, so what now? What now do I get to do that will also feel good for me? And I want to speak to that mentality shift. Took practice. I think what helped was a lot of this, like feeling the feet on the floor, feeling my butt on the seat, being able to look at something, notice my breath, all those things I've been practicing over the last, several years. It helped me be able to pause and see the situation a little bit more clearly. But I think a huge piece that it helped me with is, in general now in my life, I don't feel like I'm always or almost always at near capacity, like on the brink. You know how you're talking about like one last thing in that ferry, or the thing didn't fit in the truck, and like tears.
Yeah.
I think that in the past, a lot of my life felt like I was at that place, even though I wouldn't have really known, because it wasn't often that last thing would happen and the tears would come. Sometimes it would happen, but I got very good at functioning at that level where things are just sort of under the surface. And I would somehow be able to manage things just so that it wasn't a common occurrence that something went over the edge and threw me over the edge. But if I think about the general sort of energy I was living in, it was like almost at overload and overwhelm at all times.
Right.
And that's something that's really shifted. I don't feel like, occasionally I might feel like I'm there, but also very briefly. But when you're not living in that place all the time, so close, actually, I would say so close to dysregulation, but I don't think that's true. I think that's already highly dysregulated, but I just didn't know it at the time. Then when plans change, when someone or something throws a wrench in your plan, there's so much more capacity to like work with it, be okay with it, trust the process, trust the unfolding, be able to see the gifts. When people say, can't you like be positive and see the gifts of this? Like, well, yes, there's like some part of mental practice that goes into that. And also, if you are accustomed to being in a very nervous system dysregulated place, it's very hard to see the world through that lens.
Totally.
Very hard to see the world through that lens on any type of consistent basis. And then we typically give ourselves a hard time of, why can't I be more positive?
Right. Where's the time and space to remember what's important and how you want to feel and your own agency and empowerment? There's no time for that.
Yeah. But there's time in this moment to feel my toes squishing into the floor and to feel my hands squishing each other. And that's what I love about these practices, is like, you can easily build them into whatever you're doing. Even if you're choosing to ruminate. And sometimes I think we choose to ruminate. Sometimes I think we're so dysregulated that that's just the behavior pattern we fall into. But even when we're doing something that maybe doesn't serve us the most, you can still add in these practices and you'll still benefit from them over time.
Yes. These are drips of present moment awareness that grow this pause over time. I remember in dysregulated states, dysregulatedly doing these regulation activities, and it really accrues over time. It just has such a tremendous effect. It's a gift.
Yeah. A gift. So I had a little proud of myself moment and a little moment of like being in awe, I think a little bit of, wow, like lots has changed. I wouldn't have dealt with that or handled that very well in the past. It sort of would have been a mark on my day, even if I would have carried on from the day. And I think another piece here is I would have more easily fallen into blame and shame.
Right.
You know, and I've tried really hard in my mothering journey to not blame and shame my kids. I grew up with a lot of that. I really didn't want that for my kids, but you know, we're also human. But what I noticed is it never even leaned to that place. It was like, well, that's unfortunate. And that's interesting logic that I don't quite understand, but okay. And also, that's not the end of the world. And I was able to, after school, chat with him and just chat through, like, what was your thought process around that? And he explained it calmly. And I was like, oh, okay. Thinking, like, still doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. And I was able to let him know, hey, that impacted my day, right? I had to change my plan and it all worked out in the end. And next time, just if you're the last one leaving, just lock the door.
Ta-da.
And that's it. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in the past, even though maybe I would have tempered it because it was talking to my kid, but the energy inside my body would have been like, what the heck is wrong with you? You screwed up my day.
Yeah.
Right.
And think of how that impacts, so that becomes the story you tell yourself, right? That can become family legend. You know, it could have been a thing that you shame him about later. And then he's, never going to not lock a door ever again and develop a complex about locking doors. It could have ruined your day. And for the rest of the day, you would have thought, oh, I could have done this, but instead I had to do that. And there's so many places we can go with our mind, but instead what it became for you was, oh, well, this happened and that happened and I went for a nice walk. Got some stuff done early,
Sort of unmemorable, other than the fact that it shows me that like this is actually a huge win and a lot of progress. Yeah. But in the past, it would have been memorable leaning into the category of resentment.
Yeah.
And it probably would have snowballed into, see, I always have to change my plans for you people. And it would be like the children and everybody else would fall into that category. And all the times that my needs don't come first and I have to be flexible and put your needs ahead of me. And then it would snowball into, and all those times that you messed up that other thing. And I always have to pick up the pieces. Like it just goes and goes and goes.
These are good
Yeah.
cues. When it becomes really dramatic or really all encompassing, it's a great time to feel the feet on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Find some trees to look at.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff, Gigi. And congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I worked hard for this. I practiced.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily it didn't feel hard doing the practice. I think that's what I enjoyed. Like, oh, I can just look at a tree. Can I tell you the funny practice I did today?
Yeah.
I told my kid after I picked him up, he's like, Mom, that's stupid. And I was like, well, it made me feel good. So I've told you that I really love practicing orienting, which really just means like looking at your space, right? Or that's one form of orienting, is looking at your space. And so I started enjoying looking for different shapes in the trees and realizing that the trees are all different shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would delight in the different shapes I would see. And I would take a moment with each tree. And what I mean by that is I'm just walking. I'm not like up there having a moment, but some of them, they're quite special. I do walk up and touch them or whatever. But what I mean by having a moment is I'll just feel my feet on the ground and I'll look at it and I'll stay there for a full breath. And then I'll carry on with my walk. And today, though, I was like, let's play. Let's add a little bit to this. This is another thing I really love, is building on these practices and how fun it is to play and build. And so, because even the art, the practice of looking at trees is built upon, before I would just feel my feet on the ground and look at something.
Mm.
And then, another iteration of it became look for different types of trees. So anyways, I decided, this is going to sound a little silly, to have my body make the shape of that particular tree as I walked past it. And it was so fun.
Yeah.
And like some trees, it's really obvious what shape they are, right? Like this or whatever. But some trees, like the leaves are falling, and some trees, the shape isn't as obvious, like how to move your body to match the tree. And so it just takes something. I was inspired by the tree, but like it was just fun. It was like delightful, and it was silly, and it was playful, and it helped me shift into a different nervous system state, a little bit more of a playful state, a more focused state of like, oh, let me really look at those branches. And then what I love is it helped me change my body posture.
Yeah.
Because what our body posture does has such an impact on how we feel.
Yeah.
Right. So it was sort of fun. I liked it.
Oh, let's go on a tree impersonation walk next time you're here. Quick, be that tree. Fun.
I like it when you give it that name, a tree impersonation walk. See, I would be so much better at that game, because I don't know, like how I sensorily, I don't know if that's a word, process things, but I'm so terrible at impersonating people. You're so good at impersonating people, like their sound, the words they use. Like, I just don't think that people register in me in that way. And so I'm always stumped when people like, impersonate someone. Like, I can't. But I can impersonate a tree.
You're not stumped with the tree.
That's funny. Dwarf. Big dwarf.
Oh, yeah. Great.
But
I would love that. If we were walking through the woods, if you hadn't told me this story and you were just like, quick, be that tree, I don't think I could be more delighted.
Yeah, it was great. And it was also a reminder, like, in the past, I would have probably kept something like that to myself, fearing like it was too dorky and silly and people would make judgments. But I was like proudly told my kid, I'm like, you know what I did today while you were at hockey? And he's like, a teenager, right? So he's like, that's stupid, Mom.
But consider the alternative. You could have just been worrying in your car.
Right? So I said, I took the opportunity to remind him, like, some people's stupid is somebody else's fun. And I said, it was fun. I felt good. It made me feel good.
That's amazing.
And then I was actually a few minutes late to pick him up. And I said, and that's why I was late. I was having fun with the tree. And he had a good laugh, you know. So it was like a nice connecting moment too. And
yeah, I dig it. Oh, can you see trees where you are? Are there any good tree impersonations we could do for a closing?
I have my droopy monstera, so it would be like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I see the plant. Is that a snake plant behind you?
It is.
So it goes like this.
It does. With the movement. Magnificent. Okay, there's 2 snake plants there. Could you also impersonate the other one? Oh my God, I love you completely. Yes. Oh, I love it. There's some big cedars outside, which
they look like that.
It's so tall. I'm trying to make myself 100 feet tall. It's not working.
I can see.
Oh, this is good.
So, if you're not watching us, you're missing out. So I think on Spotify you can watch, and on YouTube you can watch. But
that's right.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't have trees around, you can also, look up trees on the internet or draw a tree and then impersonate it. Good luck not laughing while you do this. Please enjoy.
It's what I've learned, and what's really helped me is learning how to be silly, because I grew up in a household that really didn't value silliness and playfulness. It was about being serious and knowing things and accomplishing things. And being silly around other people and finding comfort and joy in that, and a sense of shared humanity in that, and also being silly with other people. I think that has been really healing. That I feel like if you can be silly with other people, and you can also bring deep, heavy stuff to other people, and you can also shine with other people, then you're on that path of, I'm just comfortable being myself with people. And it's a very freeing experience to get to live that way. And for many years, I think I knew there was some constriction in my life, but it wasn't super clear to me what it was, maybe. And it's really neat now to feel like I will just impersonate your tree like this. And we can delight in it together, and we can laugh, and we can feel a sense of connection in that. Right? We've talked about dancing like turkeys before. We've brought that into couples work with people. All of a sudden, they're sharing a moment of laughter and connection, and the nervous system co-regulates. And so, yeah, there's value, I think, in doing these silly things with people.
So much value. Even strangers. I'm having a small fantasy right now that somebody's listening to us on like a bus or on a public street, and they're impersonating a tree, and some passerby understands what they're doing, and then they do it together.
Aw, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, very sweet. Nice. Okay. Well then, that's it for this week, huh?
Yes. Oh, there's a tree. There's a plant on my desk. It goes like this.
Oh, it's a cutie.
Cutie.
Like so much personality. Oh my gosh. That is a cutie, and it does go like this. So sweet. Oh my God. Oh, thanks. Thanks for that. And thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next week. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. We'll see you next time.
Bye.